I am so excited today as I'm in studio with one of my personal heroes, Kenny McElroy. I've learned so much from this guy's teaching, his books, videos, just such an amazing person. What I really love about Kenny, he's just one of the most caring, giving people. He's always teaching, always just giving back. And so I can't thank you enough, Kenny, for being here with us today.
Hey,
So
it's awesome, man. Thank you.
yeah,
It's
thanks
been fun watching you guys. You guys are on fire.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. It's like it's awesome. You're a good model to look up to, so I appreciate that. Kenny, I'm not gonna take a lot of time. I want to just dive right in. So, tell our listeners, how'd you get started in real estate?
Well, probably like a lot of people. So my parents, neither of them graduated from high school.
Wow.
So started off very humbly, got to college, lucky, with a athletic scholarship. And that was really the first time I was like, wow, like, you can do a lot with yourself with a little bit of education. Because at that point, I was bumbling through high school and really, honestly, no direction really. I don't want to minimize the impact my parents had, but they were limited in their belief system too. So, as you're a product of your environment, and I was, and everything was, we can't afford it, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of people grow up like that. And so for me, it's just been constant personal development from the beginning. And I ended up buying my first 2-bedroom, 2-bath. It was $160,000, used my own money, the money that I had saved. And I was cash flowing like $100 a month. That was my first real estate investment. Wow. And up to that point, Mike, I got to tell you, I didn't really understand financial, capability, things that you could do, invest in and things like that. I was handing my money over to a financial planner, wealth manager, all that kind of stuff. I mean, not a lot, and I was like, I remember one time I was like 10 years later. Now you can imagine my first $2,000 I made out of college, I gave this guy. 10 years later, I think it was about $2,000. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like something, this is not what he told me it was going to be. You know how they give you that whole, it compounds and makes money over time. It didn't. And so that's when I started digging into fees and what it was invested in. Up to that point, I was just thought, I'm going to work my butt off and then give somebody my money. And then I'm like, okay, no more of that. I'm going to invest on my own. And that's how I started. And then I, of course, just never stopped. And now we've got 300 employees, $1 billion worth of real estate, and, a whole company that, just organically we grew from nothing, all through the principles that you and I both learn and teach.
Yeah. And as I said in the intro, what I love about spending time with you, Kenny, you're the most unassuming guy that I've ever met. You have 300 employees. You've got all these assets under management. Yet at the end of the day, like you've got such a passion for life. So I really appreciate that about you. So what gets you up every morning? Like what keeps you going?
Oh, right now, well, it changes, but for right now, it's making my boys the best that they can be.
Wow,
that's it. So obviously, you know what I mean? So that's just on my mind now because they're in college. And it's always on your mind, right? You want them to be producers, not necessarily just consumers, right? And producers for the greater good. So it's changed over time. I'll be honest, in my 20s, I was just trying to make a buck. Trying to pay my bills and, trying to buy a house, and then in your 30s, I was trying to, start my first business and doing that. But then it turns to relationships, everything, right? It's just, you start to realize that, money is really nothing. I mean, it's nice to have. Don't get me wrong.
It's necessary,
but relationships at the end of the day are everything, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to your boys here in a minute because we were together at one point in time, but I want to circle back. So let me ask you a couple questions that I ask every guest. So who's had the greatest impact on your life?
Gosh, I don't know one person, but a lot of people. So I have a tendency to gravitate to like people that are doing really well in an area that I'm aware of or focused on at the moment. And there's been many. So in the early days, it would have been some of the business owners that I worked for. But before that, it might be some teachers, that I had at university, or even my wrestling coach in college. He was I think everyone is just a little bit here and there. And when I first started having a family, I started meeting with a guy every month for 10 years, and he had 5 kids, and all 5 wanted to hang out with him all the time. You know what I mean? And they were all in their 20s and 30s. And I said, Charlie, how is it that, like all 5 fly to you? Like, you know what I mean? And it's it's 1,000 things, right? Yeah. And so I said, I want a relationship like that with my kids. And so it always is changing, sometimes Robert Kiyosaki in a lot of ways, as you know, I've been friends with him for 20 years. Mark Victor Hansen, you kind of bump around and meet some of these guys, and you start to see really what they're all about and who they are. And their character. Yeah. And so sometimes you meet somebody that's really famous and they don't have the character and you're like, okay, they're out. You know what I mean? I don't care anything about how famous they are. It's just, so it just kind of boils down to that. And I just try to glean a little bit off of each one.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so number 2, if you could narrow it down to one thing that has had the greatest impact on your success, what would it be? What's your superpower?
Well, probably I would say awareness. Yeah, I know that's an interesting one. But I think what happens a lot of times, especially when I was young, you know how sometimes when people are talking, you're thinking about what you're going to say instead of listening to them? Yeah. Once I learned not to. And really, because what happens is whether you're in a sales situation or a negotiation situation or sitting down with your 15-year-old kid, listening and being aware of where they're coming from is the most important thing, in my opinion, being present at that very moment. I'm not trying to be all spiritual, but I'm letting you know, like I remember my son, I sat down with him and I was trying to manage him, or deal with him, and we weren't connecting, man. Like, I'm sure many, many parents have been through this. And then once I just settled my mind down and then tried to really hear him and listen to him, we started to click. Wow. And I just was trying to meet him where he was. And I've seen it in my meetings. Like I was selling a bunch of projects, and we had this massive brokerage team come in from New York, and they flew in, they all sat down. And I said to the guy, I go, hey, you could tell he wasn't present. Yeah. I said, hey, Tyler, what's up? What's going on with you? This is called processing. Right. And he's like, oh, I just hung up on the phone, and something's going on, with my family. And I says, okay, well, let's just hold the meeting up. And, why don't you go handle that right now? And so he went and handled it, came back in, and he was present. Yeah. And we had an amazing meeting, but he would have been not present the whole meeting. Yep. You know what I mean? Yeah. So people have life coming at them all the time, and it takes, I think, it's my responsibility to find out if they're present, not present, and if they're not, that's okay. Yeah. I'm not trying to change them, fix them, anything. I'm just trying to meet them where they're at, and sometimes they're not even aware. That's probably it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So number 3, what was your greatest setback, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, man, we had a lot. Gosh, well, I had a partnership that was super successful, big name company, 2 other partners, handshake, yeah, let's do this, let's do that, some kind of loose writing, but not even the legal agreements weren't that tight, you know what I mean? And we started blowing it up, making a ton of money. And right before we started making a lot, like this is 15 years ago, maybe more, we had a big partnership blow up, and I left, and I had a third, and I was scrambling, for all the pieces that were, you know what I mean? Yeah. So honestly, I was younger, and I was, they bought jets, and, I bought a laptop. True story. Wow. So, but it's okay. I learned a lot. I did. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about verbal agreements. I learned a lot about at the end of the day, I learned a lot about greed. I learned a lot about relationships. I learned a lot about a lot. And it was the best thing that ever could have happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I saw you, this isn't one of the questions, but I saw you do a presentation on partnerships. You should try to get your hands on that and share that. That was
I know.
Really good,
I drafted that on the way down to Miami.
I like it.
Yeah.
So number 4, what is the piece of advice you find yourself sharing the most?
Well, I think if it comes to business or investing or real estate, it's cash flow. So I remember I'm involved in a group called YPO and also EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. And I remember connecting with a buddy of mine who eventually became my partner. And he was a lot more seasoned than I was. He had taken a company public, and he had won Entrepreneur of the Year for the country of Canada. He was a very, very big personality and very, very experienced. And he said to me once, he said, follow the cash, follow the cash. And even then, I didn't do it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I was like, I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. His name was Phil Carroll. And then I got it. You know what I mean? And what happens a lot of times as you're moving forward is you're caught up in all the peripheral things and all the details. It's all important, and sometimes you don't actually follow the actual most important thing, which is how are you going to pay for all this? Yeah. You know what I mean? So I do it on my apartments. I do it on my businesses. I do it on my personal life. I do it almost on everything I do now. I just want to make sure that that's always sound and that I'm not chasing something for, what eventually isn't going to pay off or, because you spend a lot of time, we see it all the time. I see it in businesses where, like I had a buddy that had a printing company in Phoenix and I'm like, his name was Mike. I go, Mike, like, you're done, man. Like in 10 years, like you're going to be obsolete. He's like, no, I'm not. He just went and bought $300,000 worth of printing equipment. And he was doing brochures and all that crap. I go, dude, it's all going online. No, you know what I mean? I'm holding the line. I'm like, okay, sure enough. You know what I mean? The thing's worth nothing now, so just following the cash, I think is the most important thing.
That's awesome. Thanks. Okay. So I want to circle back to, you talked about your sons.
Yeah.
We had a small group of friends together a couple years ago. We were doing a small mastermind, and you had brought up, you started talking about how you had bought your place in Idaho and you bought a resort in Sedona. And I'm listening to all this. I'm gathering this. And the thing that you said, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but basically you said that you were looking at your legacy and you wanted a place that no matter what, those kids would want to come back and spend time with you. Can you dig into that for me? Because that was just such a pivotal moment for Kara and I.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody operates in the short term, like with real estate. I know you do, but I always look at the end, like the beginning and the end, the exit or whatever you want to call it, the long game. I'm always playing the long game. Mm-hmm. So even with my relationships, I have on my goals, meet with my mom 6 times. In 2020, like it's a goal. Meet with my brother, go do this, right? Meet with my sister, you know what I mean? So yeah. I have it that specific. And so I'm always, I'm working that long game. And so where I was heading with all of that is, again, this is back from one of my mentors. He's like, you have to have a place that is free, that your family wants to come to. Yeah, and that's also healthy. You can have a place, but if it's not healthy while they're there, they're not going to show up. Yeah. So it has to be that place, right? And so it doesn't necessarily have to be in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, or Sedona, or whatever. But he said my kids, as they got married, had grandkids, they had jobs, they didn't have jobs, whatever. He goes, his was Telluride. They never, ever missed those 2 weeks in Telluride because I flew them up and everything. And so, I'm starting to see that now as my kids start having girlfriends and they're off of college and they're, having internships and stuff like that. I'm seeing them less and less. Yeah. Even my older son, he literally had an internship all summer. He came up and spent time at my house in Coeur d'Alene for 10 days. That was it, and I'm used to having him for like 3 months. Yeah. So I started to look at, I remember going to one speaker, he goes, how old are your kids? And at the time, I would say 12 and 13 or something. And he said, how many summers do you have left? And I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
I'm like 5, 6. That was it.
Wow.
Right? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
really put it in perspective. So it was a combination of that plus that other on getting this place, having a kind of a spot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's working because every year my kids, they fly in their girlfriends and their friends and you know what I mean?
Yep.
My house is a wreck, man. Like it's just annihilated, the pantry's, the food and you know what I mean? The place is a mess. I love it.
Yeah.
And, so for me, it's just having them around, you know what I mean? And it's a big important thing, but it's a long game for me. I want to have a relationship with my kids. I already know where I am financially. I know where I'm going to go. Maybe not completely, but pretty close. And so the rest is that's all just, not that important.
Yeah.
What's important is my relationship with them.
I'm not going to go into the whole formula right now, but, one of the key things that I'm always looking at is, what do you really want? Why do you want it? How long from the time you started processing that, I've got 5 summers left, did you just immediately know?
Oh, immediate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, that would hit me hard. I remember the guy's name was Joel Weldon. He's a big speaker. He'd won like Toastmasters Best Speaker of the Year. And, he's very, very good guy. And I remember listening to him and he's like, how many summers do you have left? I remember I was like, oh, geez, I have 5. I have 5 left with my oldest son. And so that's it. So that's when I started booking Kilimanjaro. I took both kids to the summit of Kilimanjaro, and I started doing these trips, Machu Picchu and stuff like that with them, and started taking them around the world more and working less. That was it. That's when I stopped working in the summer. I moved to Coeur d'Alene at the end of May. I don't work while I'm up there, June, July, August. I spend the time with them. And it's worked. I'm out wakeboarding with them. I'm out on the boat. I'm out on the jet skis. We're playing golf. We're hiking. We're just together.
Yep.
And, when they're gone, they're gone. They're in college. I don't see them.
Yeah. So you're a mentor to so many of us. How's that like looking at that relationship with your sons? Do you just look at it the same?
Oh, they don't listen, man. I mean, I'm like everybody, right? I don't know. Like I was laughing at this the other day. My buddy's like, do you listen to your parents? I go, no. Like, who does? Yeah. Really?
Right.
Let's just be honest. But I've I'll tell you a funny story. Our governor, Doug Ducey, texted me and he's like, hey, would you be willing to meet with Joe, his son, who's a junior at ASU? I'm like, of course. So Joe came in 2 weeks ago and he's like, thanks, man. Like, our kids don't listen to us, right? He's the governor.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's
Yep.
just is what it is. Yeah. So that's what I've done is I've gotten my friends around my kids. Mm-hmm. They listen, you know what I mean? Yep. And the other thing is be careful who you're hanging out with.
Yeah.
As you know, that's massively important. So like if your son was hanging with me, it would be awesome.
Awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
And I would treat him like my own and I would only fill him with good stuff. Doug blew up my phone for 2 days afterwards. He's like, oh my God, Joe's on fire, after he left here. And that's what I'm talking about. I just, they do listen to me, I think, and maybe at some point in their 20s, maybe they'll start to come around, but I just assume they don't. And then I just put them around my friends and family that I trust and I know are just going to drop good things in their head.
Man, I don't want to brush over something that you just said. And somebody shared this with me a while back too, but that's a great way to take inventory in the friends that you have in your life too. Would you want them speaking into your kids' lives?
I'm telling you,
I don't want to brush over that. That was huge. I
think it's a big deal. Jim Rohn says, right? Mm-hmm. You are your 5 closest people that you hang out with, right? Wow. And I got to tell you, I've leveraged my YPO friends, and all my other friends to a great degree that way. Yeah. I'm saying, hey, and I've had my buddies call me up, not just Doug, say, hey, can my son do an internship here at MC Companies? And I'm like, of course, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's all part of the bigger game. Everybody's playing, and I think you just got to recognize that the truth is most, your kids don't really think you know anything.
Right. It's so good.
It's okay though.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, I appreciate your time on that and,
Yeah.
and getting behind the curtain on the
course.
family, because sometimes that's off limits. So I appreciate
Nope.
you always being open. Robert Kiyosaki,
Yeah.
you brought this up, like friend, mentor. You've done business with him forever. How's that shaped your thinking?
Oh, a ton. Yeah, he's a wild man too. You know, he's super volatile. He's an ex-Marine. You know, like you never know what you got with him. But I love it because he always tells the truth. He's characters incredible. Like but he studies. He's one of the smartest people I know. I mean, he's always reading 3 or 4 books. He probably reads 40, 50 books a year. All we do is text books. I just saw him. I was just with him the last 2 days. I walked away with 3 more books, you know what I mean, that he gave me. And you know, they're at my house and I started reading them. We're just, that's all we do. We send each other links and videos and, you know, there's a lot of banter back and forth there too. You know, when I met him, Rich Dad Poor Dad wasn't a big deal. You know, I met him right when it came out and I was just looking for investors. And so we've become really, really close and really, really good friends. And he invests most of his money with me, as you know. And, you know, but I have 400 investors, you know. Mm-hmm. Robert's the one I'm the closest with because he's here and I see him a lot. But he's really taught me how, well, one, he realized before I did that I would be a good teacher. Mm. He actually said it to me. He's like, "You're a teacher." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm a real estate guy. I'm out raising money." And he's like, "Trust me, you know, you need to teach." And so that's why I went online with him. That's why I speak around the world with him. That's why I've written the books. You know, I donate all that money to charity, all the book revenues. Wow. So all that, you know, it's just all part of it's helped me on the philanthropy part, you know. So that's how I look at it now. Any Rich Dad time I spend, all goes to charity.
That's awesome. That's so cool. So you had brought up earlier that one of the things that you find over and over is cash flow, the cash flow conversation. Yeah. I remember sitting across from Robert Kiyosaki at dinner on the Real Estate Guys cruise, and I was having a conversation, and I'm like, "It's so simple," and he was like, "It's not simple," and it like took me, it set me back a little bit, and I didn't mean that like the whole it's not easy.
Oh, trust me, if you would have said it's not simple, he would have goes, "It's simple." Yeah. He just takes a contrarian view on most stuff. How do you have to worry about that?
Get your attention.
Oh, my God, yeah. I laugh. Robert told me, he's like, I remember he did it on Wolf Blitzer, you know, with Lehman Brothers. He's like, you know, "Oh, yeah, I just said Lehman's going down." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I saw that. That was pretty incredible, you know, because it did." He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "You just take you know what I mean?" Mm-hmm. But he does it with study. So you could take either position. Sure. It is simple or it isn't simple.
Yeah. So on the cash flow conversation, which again is probably one of my favorite books, The Cash Flow Quadrant. But you know, you said that's something that you find yourself over and over. Yeah. It's had a major impact on your life. I've noticed that when you guys are teaching, you're constantly coming back to the same principles. And that's why I brought up the simple conversation, because what I realized through that conversation with him is it's not simple to grasp. It takes repetition and it's over and over and over.
That is true.
So why do you guys, why do you constantly come back to the same principles?
Well, you know, I think one of the things that he helped me with was, you know, as you're going and cranking along and you're, you know, I'm building my property management company, I'm buying stuff, I'm building stuff, I'm developing stuff, you know. You know, he has the ability to, and even in the Steve Jobs book says this too, you know, the ability to take the complex and make it simple, like he did with the iPod. That's the best example. It's actually in his book. He talks about Buckminster Fuller and you know, all those things and the generalized principles and making it all come back to something really simple. So people, when they hear a word, like if I'm at church or I'm at a conference or something and somebody says a word like capitalization rate and I don't understand it, you check out. Mm-hmm. You just do. Yep. You immediately check out when you're like, "Oh, I'm," you know, the internal voice is going, "Oh, I'm not very smart. I'm this, I'm that," you know, you know, it just is what it is. So the more you use buzzwords, even though you can, and so I do, depending on who I'm talking to, like tomorrow I'm flying to Laguna Beach. I'm in a private equity conference. Everyone there raises money, $100, $200, $300, $400 million funds, right? Yep. Okay. It'll be a lot different. Right. Then I'm like, right? But when I'm talking to somebody, you know, at a Rich Dad conference, income, expense, NOI. You know what I mean? So, and the same thing with my kids. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I actually think that's one of the bigger problems with school is they don't meet people where they're at.
Such a good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. We always try to take, we can talk about ROI and GRM and NOI and, like LOI. Like it doesn't really, like we throw all this stuff out and people don't understand it. So you just got to bring it all back to them. And I think keep it as basic as you can and then, grow from there.
Such a good point. So one of the things that I've really noticed watching you, you're always pointing back to your team. So investing is a team sport, whether it's your attorneys, accountants, CPAs, or your internal team. Can you kind of just tell me your philosophy on surrounding yourself with the best?
Yeah. Well, I think what happens is, that cash flow quadrant you mentioned at ESBI, like E is employee, B is or S is, self-employed, and B is business, and I is investment. I think what happens is, and I've seen this a lot, especially with guys I hang out with or maybe went to college with, let's say, like I have a couple friends that are doctors and dentists, let's say. In fact, I can think of one. Whatever he can do that day is all he can do.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like he can only have so many appointments in a day, period. Right? And so your capacity to do whatever it is you can do, whether you're a CPA, whether you're a lawyer, whatever, a real estate agent, doesn't really matter, an insurance agent, you only have so much time in the day if you believe that everything has to go through you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I see this, and so I know some very successful people that are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and they're making pretty good money. They're going crazy, but they don't believe in other people. They don't delegate, you know what I mean? And they have no team. It's all them. And usually it's an ego issue, but regardless, that's another topic. But what I found is that I don't want to be responsible for anything. So I want to make all the money, but I don't want to have to do anything.
I get it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in the meantime, it could spread the money around and let everybody participate in it. Everybody gets to learn. People like you met my marketing team before here, right?
It's awesome.
Yeah, right. So we got 6 people in there. All they do, I could not sit in there and do what they do.
Right.
I don't even know how, but I know what I need. You know what I mean? And so you bring these folks in. They just blow me away. Honestly, They're so smart, so bright. They're articulate. They come in with all this experience if you let it happen, Like, so I find like a lot of times if an organization is super controlled and top down, like the Spider and the Starfish book, like control center, this is what you're going to do, everything, then there's not a lot of collaboration. But if you do it more like a Starfish model, where everybody's got a hand in the overall direction, then like as a starfish, you get one of those legs or tentacles cut off, he grows right back. You know what I mean? It doesn't affect the whole thing. So I just, and you hit a wall pretty easily and pretty quickly if you try to do everything yourself. And I believe in empowerment, and also it's fun. It's more fun to learn, keep an open mind.
So I've watched you, whether it's employees, whether it's friends, relationships, clients, your energy level is like 99 always. Is that something that you had to work at? Even back to the employees or whatever, like, is that something that just comes natural to you, or did you have to learn that and do you have to work at it?
Well, it's a good question. I'm always aware of it. So, I mean, even in the mornings, like sometimes, how you get up, sometimes you're like, oh my God, like, all your self-talk.
Yep.
I think it's all part of it. I don't want to go to the gym. Right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I gotta leave, and I gotta be here and then here and then here and then I gotta make here, and isn't my life stressed out? Right? Yeah. So I just come back from that, and I'm like, okay, like relax. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be okay. And that actually, once I kind of put things in perspective and what is important, is a lot of times what I've found is that people, they make things important that are not important. You know?
Yep.
So this weekend I went to a charity event, and the woman lost her 9-year-old daughter and her husband within a year.
Wow.
That's important.
Yep.
Right?
That's crazy. Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Like you know what I mean? You
Yep.
guys, like,
Bring it down.
you go, like when I went to Africa, or I go, travel abroad, and you start to see people that are really in need, you realize, what's important, right?
Yep.
So now I'm not saying, certain things aren't important. I'm not. But what I'm saying is, so once you kind of filter through that and realize that, it's really a lot of it's self-talk and your little voice and little voice management.
Yep.
It honestly, it just raises my energy. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Because
Yep.
I don't really have much weighing me down,
Yeah.
stress-wise,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
There's just a few things on my mind at all time that I feel like are worth maybe some stress.
Yep.
But not very many.
Yep.
You know?
You guys are constantly ranked in the top employers in Arizona. I mean, you said it earlier, the governor calls you for advice. And
Yeah.
Is it just, is that all intentional? Do you go out? No, you're just a good guy. You just show up.
No. Actually, I'll tell you exactly what I did. I followed the Rich Dad principles.
I knew there was a process here that we could
I
figure
did.
out.
We started doing book studies for our employees like 10 years ago.
Okay.
So I started doing book studies with Robert. So you basically take a book and you study it. In fact, before Doug was president, we did Good to Great with Robert at Robert's house. I brought him over there because Doug started Cold Stone Creamery and founded it. And, before he sold it and went into politics. And I've been doing these book studies forever. And I found that when you study something that is everybody's on the same page on, literally,
Yep.
There's no opinion. Like,
Okay.
what does the author say here? You know what I mean? It's not a debate. It's not this. It's not. But everybody's on one page. So we started doing that. In the early days, we used to have the normal meetings. Here's our NOI. Here's this. Here's that. Here's what we're going to grow. Here's what we're going to do next. And they're sitting there going, really? Like, okay. Flew halfway across the country to sit for this. And then we started doing book studies. I just tried it. And I facilitated the first few. And it was life-changing for me and for a lot of people. And so our employees started realizing that this company was more about developing me as a person and not as much about the numbers. And I always start off by saying, you guys know your numbers. You guys know what's right and wrong. We're not gonna talk about that today.
That's awesome.
We're just gonna get into, communication things and things like that. And so we pick all kinds of books. Like we picked one called The Habit Loop, which is a great book. Well, why is it you get into habits? And then we have fun with it, and another one's on communication and, and another one's on relationships. And, there's one was called The Happiness Advantage. And, where the guy, literally this guy had gone to Harvard, right? And he's from Texas, and he's like, he got lucky. It was like a draw. It wasn't his grades. He went there, and he's like, oh my God, I'm at Harvard.
Yeah.
And he's like, 2,000 of these kids were there, and he's like, 1,950 of them were like, oh my God, I'm at Harvard. Like, my dad went to Harvard. I have all this pressure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the whole book is, as an example, your mindset. One sees it as a burden, one sees it as an opportunity, and so that's where we stay. We're just at personal development. And so all of that has developed into better relationships with our vendors, and they give us a bunch of money for philanthropy, better relationships with my friends, better relationships with my kids, better relationship with my employees. You know what I mean?
So you're just showing up, adding value. I always say in order to live more, you've got to give more. So it just sounds like you're just constantly looking where you can add value and just help people grow.
Yeah. That's it. And some people leave us and then they come back, and some people leave us and don't come back. That's okay.
Yeah, totally.
Do you know what I mean? Like, It is what it is. But we do have very low turnover, and we continue to be, the people that work here, they know that I value them.
Yeah.
Over anything else. Right.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
You said earlier, I want to make sure that I get awareness. Is that the same as just being present?
It's yes.
So that was actually going to be one of my questions, because I know like every time I've ever been with you, I mean, you're a busy guy, but if it's a 2 or 3 hour dinner, you're there, you're present. Did you have to work on that?
Oh my God, yeah. I've got the worst ADD ever. Like, I find myself drifting all the time.
Can you give us some tips on how you work through that?
Well, the way you're supposed to do it is actually watch yourself. That's it. That's actually it.
Watch yourself.
So in other words, like in this conversation right now, instead of me having a conversation with you, I watch it.
Okay.
So I'm a third person.
Yep.
Looking, you know what I mean? And that makes me aware. Just that simple. I mean, there's a lot to it. There's a bunch of books. One of the best books is called Awareness by Anthony DeMello. I love that book. I study that book, and I've read it a number of times. It's one of the Rich Dad books. But one of the things he says in there, well, he says a lot, but is everybody's happy. They're born happy. Think about it. Our kids, when they're little, they're happy.
Yeah.
But then we de-happy them. Things, right?
Yeah.
Things, shocks, whatever.
Yep.
Things we say to them, things the teacher says to them, things a coach says to them, things they go through that you're there or not there, whatever. All of a sudden, they get closed down. You know what I mean? But when they're little, they're super happy. And so there are things that, once you start to be aware of, they're there, like I look at the ripple effects. Buckminster Fuller calls it precession, which is when you drop a pebble in the water, the rings that go out. That's called a precessional effect. So, if I say something to my son across the table, it might just be a knife in his heart, right? Or it could be a big hug.
Yep. Just
my words. And that could resonate with him forever. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so good.
So it's all of that combined. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when I think of the awareness piece, I think that's what I think of.
So I'm going to bring us together, because I think we could probably talk for hours. I just appreciate your knowledge and insight. So for our listeners who want to invest in capital, what piece of advice, or want to raise capital, what piece of advice would you give them?
I want to raise capital.
Raise capital.
So I actually think raising capital is easy. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't think it's hard. I think a lot of people think it's sales. It's not. It's not sales at all. And if it becomes a sales job, then that's a problem. So in my opinion, the way you should be raising capital is by showing how thorough you are in a deal that you select and when they get their money back, and have all the steps on exactly how that's going to work. In other words, before I buy something, I already know when I'm going to exit it. I already know. I know exactly when I'm getting my money back. Now, it doesn't always work, but I have worked a plan out to when, if I'm going to invest $10 million, my goal is to get it out, in 3.5 years or whatever, right? And then I work the plan. So a lot of times equity raising is that way, is showing the investor, here's your return, here's what's going to happen year 1, year 2, year 3, and here's our plan, right? Makes you accountable and responsible. You have to go through it. But then all of a sudden, the raising of the money becomes about the knowledge and the experience and the education of the deal itself. And I think a lot of times people believe that it's a sales job. And I'm not saying that it isn't a little bit. You know what I mean?
It's a process.
But it always goes back to the deal itself. And so Robert and I were there's a great story. We were at this conference speaking at the Javits Center in New York. It was actually one of the first times I met Trump. So this would have been obviously before he was president. But he was the headliner and Robert was second or whatever. And so it was fun. I got to go up on stage with those guys. And I met Trump multiple times now since then. But I remember walking through the conference. There was all these beautiful girls with these high-rise buildings in New York, with these big beautiful brochures, like a brochure was like $2 to $5.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, check this out. It's this beautiful building on the corner or whatever, right? And so I just grabbed a bunch of stuff as I walking through, and from really every single person. I walked into the green room in the back. I was sitting there with Robert, and we're at a big round table. I just spread them out. I go, check these things out, And I was like, Robert, it's interesting. The bigger the brochure, the worse the deal. And he's like, yeah, you're right. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The more of the sales job
Having to push that
you have to push, because most deals, as you know, are right back of a napkin at sometimes just over a beer.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Like now I'm like, hey, like I just did this billboard deal, I'm like, hey, blah, 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 blah. He's like, in. That's it. No brochure, no business plan. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like, it goes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when you see something and you're educated around it and you can kind of see it, the raising of the capital is not that hard. It's hard when the deal's hard.
So what would you say to the person that wants to invest passively? What should they look for? Does it kind of piggyback that same?
It's the team.
Yep. Okay.
It's 100% the team. So, I watch this now. There's a lot of syndicators out there raising a lot of capital for a lot of things, and you gotta understand cap rates. You gotta understand how they buy. You gotta understand NOI. We had a good friend of ours send me a deal and said, "Hey, somebody wants me to raise money for them on this," and I said, "Oh, take a look at the year one revenue." I go, it's much different than the rent roll. So you just ask them this question, how do you go from a rent roll that's X to a year one revenue of Y? You know what I mean? And the deal was dead. So, and so luckily we have that network, you and I, where, sending it around, and, and so deals get killed that way, or they continue. Could have been the opposite. It's like, oh my God, this is a great value add, but it wasn't. And then the guy just got defensive and, started trying to figure out a way to capture it. And this is a syndicator, out of the southeast area of the U.S. No big deal. I'm not judging him.
Right.
I'm just saying that, so luckily they came to me and asked me that question. I said, just make sure you ask these 2 or 3 questions. And then the deal died. And so that's it. Knowing what to ask, knowing what to look for. And if you don't, finding the person that can help.
So for the last question, for the group of people that are not accredited investors, they don't have $100,000 to invest. Maybe they can save $100 a week, $500 a month. What should they invest in?
Well, I'm a massive gold and silver guy, so I have a lot, and gold's like $15, $20 or whatever it is, and the reason why I like that right now is because we have to figure out some way to pay for all this Social Security and, all this printing. We're going to print the heck out of this. The U.S. is going to print a lot of money in the next 20 years, period. And so that means that the currency is going to get devalued and, precious metals, but I don't really look at it as an investment as much as I do as a hedge, like an insurance policy, because true investments actually make money for you, you know what I mean? So you got to kind of buy and sell it. But I think just paying attention to trends, but also just education, man. Obviously at kenmcElroy.com, we got a ton of videos on this stuff. Just YouTube and, whatever you can devour, it's for free, right? Buy books and, ask questions and just educate yourself. I was an idiot in my 20s, not really knowing what to look for and what to, I just started reading. Started reading and talking to people and sitting down with meetings like this, but, one-on-one over coffee or whatever, and just trying to learn. And
I love that you said that, investing in the education piece, because, a lot of times we hear stock market, Wall Street, don't invest in a 401k, but I think sometimes we don't really know what to do with that. And so I think investing in your education is probably one of the most important things somebody can do if they
still do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm literally flying tomorrow. I'm paying for a conference for 3 nights in Southern California just to learn about waterfalls inside of funds and raising capital at the Wall Street level. And, it never ends.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep. You said this already, but what I love about you is that you can hang out with the Blackstone guys at the conference tomorrow, but you're always here to teach. And so where can our listeners get more information? You kind of mentioned it already, but where can we find you?
Thanks. Well, you want to see our deals, it's MC Companies, right? But you want to get some of the videos and podcasts and all the things. It's on kenmcelroy.com, and it's right here. And I think that that's a great place to start. There's a lot that's free. You can download forms for free. I have a forum that I answer questions. I actually jump onto twice a week.
Nice.
And so it gets, filling up with questions, and I go in and answer them for the people, and people really like that. And we're just continuing to deliver really good videos for folks so that they don't make mistakes.
Well, I really appreciate everything you do, and just helping escalate the net worth of humanity. So, anything I didn't ask you that I should have?
No, man. But hey, you're a great father too. So I think great minds think alike. So congrats on that. I mean, meeting your kids at your house was awesome. And seeing the relationship you have with your wife and your friends, and congratulations.
Thanks, Kenny.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
That's so bad.
Yeah. Thanks for your time.
You bet.
All right.